All right, everybody, my guest on this edition of the show is Matt Stahl, regular here. He covers the Alabama Crimson Tide over at AL.com. And Matt, appreciate you coming on the show. There was some basketball game in Tuscaloosa over the weekend. I'm sure we'll discuss that, but I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, of course, yeah, anytime. We're a basketball state now, is what it's what the experts are saying.
Look, we talked about this off the air. I mean, look, this football is always going to be number one in this state, without a doubt. But if you look at it, the basketball teams are a lot healthier than both the football teams right now.
Yeah, I said this off the air too, but like when you take this job, you don't necessarily expect to be covering the number one versus number two basketball game between two in-state teams. But yeah, I mean, it's just a really cool thing that's going on right now, and obviously, I mean, it's not going to replace football in people's hearts. Like I don't that, but it doesn't have to, right? Like I don't think there should be this like animosity between football and basketball necessarily. Like it's cool that both things matter like this.
Yeah, and from a football standpoint, with the basketball teams being so good, I mean, if you got some recruits coming in and you got a big basketball game coming up, like you bring them to that, it's another way to kind of show potential recruits the atmosphere, how the fans are. I mean, we've seen both these fan bases. I mean, Alabama's tough to beat at home, and Auburn, of course, is tough to beat over at Neville Arena. So it can work for the football programs too when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen football recruits in Coleman Coliseum. I'm sure Auburn has them there too. When especially once we got into SEC play here, like the atmosphere over there has just been unbelievable. I'm sure they sold out that Auburn game, but it's unbelievable atmosphere in there. It's as loud as I've ever heard it, certainly in 2 years on the beat. So yeah, I mean it's a great time.
How was the whole atmosphere of the day? Game day was there, just kind of the build up of it. I mean, because one, this is the first time ever in SEC 1 versus 2 matchup in basketball. We're talking about this off the air. I mean, folks, the off air conversations were good, but we kind of dealt with that. But again, 1 versus 2, we've never seen that in SEC play. That was kind of surprising just because Kentucky and some of the other teams you've had in this conference, but just the whole build up to the game that day. What was it like in Tuscaloosa?
I thought it was great. The students were camping out there the night before to get them the good spot on game day, and then, I went in there for the actual game day show, kind of standing behind the camera, sort of thing. And yeah, it was great. I mean, the students came out, they cheered when they were supposed to. They, had a guy miss the shots there at the end of it, but yeah, I mean, it was great. You could tell the excitement was there, and then I was in there when they opened the student gates later on for, like, the game itself, and people come, sprinting in there to get the good positions. Like, it was just yeah, great day to be in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I did. It was like everybody in the state just waiting for 3 o'clock to get there. And then, of course, the game that was on ESPN beforehand had to go a little over. So we get the 3:15 tip off.
It
But
didn't fit in a 2-hour window? That's crazy.
they got to fix that with
Never
college basketball. They got to, because especially now, I'm not a big fan of replay in basketball. I think it's used too much, way too
yeah.
much. I think it slows the game down. Basketball is supposed to be a fast paced, up and down game. I really feel like it slows down momentum, and we know the tournament's going to be worse because the more
Yeah.
commercials in the NCAA tournament. Now you add in all the replays they do. I'm not saying they should get rid of replay altogether, but it should be a little bit more lesser than what
Yeah.
we're getting because
You're
it
right.
drags the game.
I like what they do when they can, where they'll change something that's not immediately, like, pressing during a TV timeout. Like, that's a good thing that they do. But, yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the answer, I think, is probably just go to quarters, like every other level of basketball, so the fouls reset earlier. You don't
Mhm.
end up in just, like, the free throw contest down there for the last 5 minutes of the game that takes 35 minutes. I mean, that Alabama Texas A&M game earlier this year went, like, about 3 hours. Like, it gets ridiculous at a certain point.
Yeah, this one was pushing it too. I mean, 2.5 at least. I hadn't seen the official runtime of how long the game went, but yeah, and I don't understand it. When I figured when women's college basketball went to quarters, okay, so the men can't be far behind. I mean, this the like you
Yeah.
said, high school, both men and women. the women's college basketball, the NBA, the WNBA, every level of basketball does quarters
Mm,
except for men's college basketball. I just don't get it because and then, let's just face it, there's some people that are casual fans and they're like, "Oh, halves? They play 20-minute halves." I'm like, "Yeah, they're
yeah.
just men's college basketball just wants to be different than everybody else."
Yeah. No, it's making it a bad TV product. I mean, it's just you can't have the games and just clutch situations that are just free throws, free throws, free throws, replay, free throws, free throws. Like it's unpleasant viewing. I think it probably has a little bit to do with, college basketball sort of losing relevance as a national game.
So the game does tip off 3:15 when we were ready to go, and Auburn jumps out quick 9 points, which hey turned out that was the difference in the game. So
Yeah.
Auburn comes out hot from the 3-point line. Janai Broome hits two threes. Alabama, I mean the 3-point line was not their friend on Saturday. They hit two in the first half. There was a stretch there in the second half where they warmed up a little bit there, but just what was kind of like your big takeaway, especially from the Alabama side of things? Like, look, I think Auburn did well defending the three, but still there were some shots there that Alabama normally makes. What was kind of like your take from that standpoint? Alabama just not being able to get in that rhythm with the 3-point shot.
Yeah, the three-point shot was bad, but I mean, my colleague Nick Kelly had a story about this. Like, they went 14 for 30 on layups. And a lot of that was just like it seemed like forcing some stuff when they were out of rhythm, like getting into some bad layup situations. But I mean, still, like a lot of those were just plays you got to hit. The free throw shooting wasn't I mean, obviously not good. Uh, but yeah, I mean, if you told me going into the game, what was it? 7 turnovers for Alabama. If you told me Alabama got through a game with 7 turnovers, I just told you they'd have won. But yeah, just I joked going into the game that I had like the perfect radio answer for like what was going to happen was, oh, it depends how the shots fall. Uh, it turned out to be exactly the case. Like Alabama just did not have its shots falling at all. Just looked out of sync offensively all night.
Yeah, and, a lot of times too, this team in ways can go how Mark Sears goes, and he did not have a great game. 4-17, which on the Auburn side, people complimenting Denver Jones on the job he did on him. But yeah, and it felt like too with Mark Sears, he was forcing some stuff around the basket sometimes, and there were some threes he was taking like some of his best looks were 10, 15 feet behind the arc. Just and of course we've seen him struggle at times this year. Like he's one of the best players in college basketball. We remember the game several weeks ago when he was benched for the entire second half, and then Alabama played better when he was not out there. Um, his play is kind of, I guess, I wouldn't say up and down, but just how vital was that for them too? That they needed him to be, I wouldn't say great, but really good. But he had his struggles too.
Yeah, he absolutely did struggle in that game, and I think if Alabama is going to sort of reach its potential down the stretch here in the season, which I mean, this could very well still be a Final Four team, uh, yeah, they're gonna need him to be better. Like, it's just kinda non-negotiable at this point. I mean, they have some other guys, some other guards, but he's supposed to be the guy who's the leader on the team, who's like the guy, especially kind of in a game like that where the chips are down. So yeah, I think that is a concern for Alabama moving forward, especially if he doesn't pull it together here quickly. Now he'll have plenty of chances against good teams here late in the SEC schedule.
And I was early on Monday morning, I was listening to one of our local stations here in Dothan, and they was talking about the guard situation there. And the host for that show brought up an idea, and I'll let throw it at you. Maybe having more situations where Aiden Holloway is running the point and having Sears at shooting guard because Holloway's not going to slash and everything like Sears does. I mean, but he can get it going with his shot too as well. But maybe kind of Alabama could look at that. I don't know if I'm not telling Nate Oates how to do his job or anybody else, but it is kind of interesting when you look at it that way. Maybe let Aiden Holloway kind of run things, and then Mark Sears kind of be the two guard in that situation.
Yeah, they had a little bit of that going on, I think, in the game on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, Aiden can be like a little hot and cold from the field. So that I mean, if he's cold, that certainly takes away a little bit of what he can do there. But Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like a terrible idea, although, I mean, the deal is, like, if Mark's good, like, you definitely want Mark at the point guard because he's one of the
Yeah.
best point guards in the country, so I think maybe the answer is less take him off the point and more, like, just Mark gets it together a little bit here, they figure out a way to get him going.
Yeah, you know what, Auburn, and I'll say this. I mean, Janai Broome had a really good game on Saturday. But at the same time, I think Alabama's bigs did do a good job with him around the basket. He was hitting threes, and then he gets hurt. I mean, he was still an impact there on the defense side of ball rebound. But I do think Alabama did at least make him uncomfortable at times in the post around the basket. What did you think of how Alabama bigs did against Janai Broome?
Yeah, I think last year in that same game, we would have scored like 65. So yeah, they did. They did a lot better. That's an area where Alabama has improved quite a bit coming off that team from last year. And obviously, mostly it's Cliff. He's very talented, big man in the middle there. But I mean, Grant Nelson, I think, matched up with him a little bit too. And I think Grant is quietly having like a much better season than he did last year. Like I think Grant has really come along. So yeah, I mean, a decent job. I mean, Janai Broome was still pretty great though. So you
Yeah.
can't. I mean, you can't give too much credit in that game.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Auburn. I mean, they got so many guys. I mean, you saw Miles Kelly had moments, Denver Jones had moments, and then Todd Pettifer's not scared of anything. I mean, he doesn't act like a true freshman at all. So, I mean, he never met a shot he didn't like, I don't think, just kind of like watching the way he plays. For Alabama, now coming off, of course, this is college basketball. This is not going to end your season losing this game. Still a highly ranked team, but now coming up, you have a matchup with Missouri coming up. I mean, they have a slate of games coming up here to close out the rest of the way. 6 games remaining. I mean, you're at Missouri this week, and you go to Kentucky. Kentucky goes to Tuscaloosa, Mississippi State at Tennessee, Florida, and then of course they have the matchup at the end of the year where they go to Auburn in the rematch. But going to Missouri, this is a good team, so Alabama can't let this loss impact them too long before you go up with this matchup. Just moving forward, what do you think are some just keys for Alabama as they want to be a 1 seed themselves, kind of get back in that conversation?
You just got to get the offense back in sync. I think it just looked so off against Auburn. So, weirdly enough, I think Alabama's played a little better on the road than at home some at times this season. So, maybe the trip to Columbia will do good for them. And then Kentucky's a team where I think they like to play sort of a similar fast-paced style to Alabama, but I think Alabama's a little more talented. And I think you saw that in the first game there in Lexington. So yeah, that could be another opportunity to do it. But I think big deal is just going to be like get your offense like really firing on all cylinders entering the postseason.
Yeah, they scored 102 on them that first time when they went to Lexington, and that was a really fun game to watch and check out. And then, of course, in that one, I mean, you talk about Grant Nelson; he had 25 in the game, and then Mark
Mhm.
Sears had 24. And with Grant Nelson, it's always one of them deals like you kind of sometimes forget he's out there. Then you look at the end of the game, the box score, he's got like you know
Yeah,
a good rebound game. He got about 15 points. Oh yeah, he did have a good game, but it's kind of in ways he's kind of like a quiet star for them. Like he just doesn't. He does what he's supposed to do. It's solid. It's fundamental, but he kind of sneaks up on you with how many points he gets.
yeah, absolutely. And I think he's really clutch too. Like
Mhm.
you know, honestly, if it's coming down to it and there's one shot to take for Alabama, like you probably think about, he's not like your best 3-point shooter on the team, but you think about going to Grant Nelson just because like he can come through in those big moments for him.
Yeah, and that's all what he's capable of in the tournament last year defensively. I mean,
Yeah.
he has awesome moments. I think it was at North Carolina where his
Yeah.
defensive prowess really came alive in the tournament last year. So let's before I let you go, we got to talk some football, of course.
Absolutely.
Alabama football, as we made jokes going at the top that the basketball programs are maybe healthier than the football programs. Of course, Alabama coming off a 4-loss season, uh, not
Guys
what
falling.
you want. Yeah, yeah. Charles Barkley went on a radio show I think last week and said it's like the world was coming to an end in
Yeah.
Tuscaloosa with 4 losses, losing that game to Michigan, of course, the Oklahoma game, and all that. Quarterback is obviously going to be a big, I think, discussion point. going into with Ryan Grubb coming in as offense coordinator, which the guy that originally was supposed to be the coordinator. Look, this is Kalen DeBoer's right hand man. I mean, we know these two are just connected with so many spots. But when you look at going into the spring, is this job Ty Simpson's to lose, or do you think somebody else can rise up?
Probably, you'd expect it to kinda be ties to lose. I don't know, they're in a weird spot where, I mean, you don't want anybody transferring out, so, like, I would not expect them to name a starter in the spring by any stretch of the imagination, and, the addition to Grubb, who, he was the primary recruiter on Austin Mack to Washington, like, does that change it at all? Like, does, Mack have more of a inside track than maybe we initially thought with him? And then, I mean, obviously, what is Keelan Russell gonna be when he gets to campus? Like, it's very, I do not think this is gonna be a settled issue after spring ball ends.
Yeah, of course, though, they do have Ryan Williams to throw to, who is no longer 17 years old.
Is he? Has he turned 18 yet? That's,
I think I saw that somewhere on the internet. The internet would not lie to us now, would it, Matt?
alright, good deal. Well, he can drive down to Mississippi and buy a lottery ticket now. So that was one of the funniest moments of last season was when, Marty Smith asked him, he's like, "How old are you?" He's like, "17." He's like, "I know, man. We all know."
Yeah, that was kinda like the running joke to do with him. Oh, sure. With them too, at the running back position, losing Justice Haynes to Michigan, they did lose some other receivers. So, what are some storylines or some position battles, particularly on the offense side of ball at Alabama, are you intrigued, seeing throughout the spring?
I'm really intrigued to see what Isaiah Horton is at wide receiver. I think he can come in and make a big impact, sort of take some pressure off of. I mean, it's a pretty good receiving core there. I mean, obviously Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard. I think is
Mhm.
only going to be better than he was last season when he was kind of like just their steadiest guy there. I think he can be really dynamic this season as well. And then, Isaiah Horton, who I think it's a little bigger than those two. He can sort of fill a little different role there. I think that they should be in pretty good shape out there for whoever's playing quarterback. And then, yeah, running back also a little bit. Jam Miller, just like can he just continue to just be the guy even more than he was this season when he was kind of splitting carries with Justice Haynes. But also, what's Richard Young bring to the table? Like you hear a lot of excitement about him kind of through the years. So I think this will be sort of his season to really show what he's about.
I feel like I've been hearing about Richard Young for 10 years. So kind of be intrigued to see what he's able to do. And Jalen Milroe, obviously going into the NFL. Man, I don't know how you feel about him as a pro prospect. I kind of look at him as somebody. Obviously, he's developmental talent. He's got all the athleticism. I mean, we know he can throw the deep ball, but in the NFL,
Yeah.
it's more than that. You got to be able to throw over the middle, intermediate stuff. Look, Jalen Hurts kind of had that issue too, coming out, and then he's developed the MVP of the Super Bowl. What is your feeling about Jalen Milroe as a prospect as he's now left Alabama?
You know, Josh Allen, when he came out of college, I said, "That guy's gonna be awful." I watched a fair amount of Wyoming football. I thought this guy could throw the ball really far, but he's probably gonna be, out of the stands. That'll never work in the NFL. And now he's the MVP. So that was the point where I quit trying to figure out which college players were gonna develop in the NFL. Uh, I think for Jalen, it's going to matter what situation he goes into. Like, you know, as somebody from Nashville, Tennessee, it's really good for Jalen Milroe that he's not like going to end up with the Tennessee Titans. I think best case scenario, he can go somewhere where he can kind of hang out for a few years, maybe behind somebody who's established, maybe even somebody that they're not trying to like immediately run out of the starting job. Where you can sort of do the Jordan Love, even Aaron Rodgers to go back thing, where you get to sit a few years, really learn what you're about, and then yes, I think he's going to go to the combine and really convince some GMs that they can fix him, because I mean, yeah, all the athletic talent's right there.
And the saying goes, you only got to convince one. It's not like I got to convince all 32. You only have to convince one. Now, should he follow current Aaron Rodgers to wherever he goes and be his backup?
Ooh, I
I'm
wouldn't hate
being
it. I don't know.
sarcastic as a Packer fan
Yeah,
saying this, so that's just,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. As somebody who's also a Packers fan is a little uh, pretty happy I no longer have to think about Aaron Rodgers on a daily basis. Uh, yes, the that'd probably depend on whether Rodgers feels like whether he takes more of an interest than he used to in developing the next generation.
Now, since we're finding this out live on the podcast that me and Matt are
Yeah.
both mutual Packer fans, unless we will have to worry about him if he does do the full Favre timeline and goes to the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't love Favre those few years with the Vikings. Boy, given recent actions, probably not going to get real close to Brett Favre right now these days. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know what Aaron Rodgers is at this point in his career. I mean, it was, I'll always think of him as like the guy who could go win any game for the Packers, except the NFC Championship game most years. But yeah, it's maybe playing in a dome would do good for him. Who knows?
Yeah, obviously the Packers were right by not allowing him to make general manager decisions, and we saw it with the Jets when he was given that power. Uh,
It's like just one more of my friends that'll fix it. Never did.
yeah, yeah. Let's bring Randall Cobb out of retirement one more time. Let's do that. Let's do that right now. Uh, anyways, we went down a Green Bay Packers rabbit hole. I did not expect us to go down when we planned this podcast. But hey, it's good. Anytime we can talk about Green Bay Packers, it's always a good time. But Matt, I appreciate you coming on, talking all things Alabama athletics, as it says down at the bottom of the screen. If the listeners, viewers want to follow you online, where can they find you?
Matt Stahl 97 on Twitter and Blue Sky. Although I've been, I don't know, just posting a lot less recently. Sort of quit seeing the benefit of a lot of that, I think. And all the work always on AL.com.
All right, sounds good. Everybody go check out Matt's coverage of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And Matt, appreciate the time, and I look forward when we get to this again.